Welcome to the Clubroom. My name is Mark Moyer, and this is brought to you by Win Again. And I am super excited to have two fantastic people in with me tonight here in the Clubroom. I'm gonna introduce each of you and then bring you in. But first, I'm going to jump into the intro for. I really want to start with Eileen because what she's doing is just so absolutely fantastic. Eileen, born and raised in Queens, New York. That's right. Yo, it's Queens. And excuse my French, by the way. I know Queens isn't French, but excuse it. But anyways, she graduated from St. Francis Prep for high school and got her degree from New York Tech. She is absolutely brilliant. She's involved with all kinds of media and television and video and all the stuff that we all think is absolutely cool, which it really is. But way cooler than that is back about 6-7 years ago, she founded the Warrior Ranch Foundation and the Warrior Ranch, which is, we're going to be speaking a ton about that in a few minutes. But Eileen, you're amazing. Can't wait to chat with you. So come on in.
Hey, how are you?
Thank you. Hey.
Yo.
Hey. Watch it, yo. Anyways, and now drum roll for Major General Jeffrey Milhorn, who graduated from the University of Florida. What's really interesting, and we're going to have to ask him about that, is that most people seem to think that everybody in the Army is pretty buttoned up. Here's a guy who went to Florida, and he was in a fraternity. So we're going to ask a little bit about what it was like to be in a fraternity. He was an ATO, and the ATO at my school, Colgate University, used to actually put severed pig heads on the front of their house. So I don't think Jeff did that in his house, but who knows? He just recently retired after 32 years in the Army. Congratulations, Jeffrey. He was really involved in engineering and construction, and he's carrying that expertise into his ventures going forward, which we'll talk about in a minute. But so many, I mean, an entire career of accomplishments. He vacationed for a while in Afghanistan. Just a super guy. He's also super into surfing, which I think is really cool. Mahalo. And is the founder of Cloudbreak Global Ventures. I feel like there should be a curtain opening and then someone coming out of the curtain like the Johnny Carson show or something. But anyway, Jeff, thanks for being here. Really excited to have you both. Thanks for being here. I truly appreciate you both being joining us here in the Clubroom. Yeah, of course. And it's interesting because one of the things that I'm very passionate about is supporting our nation's service members, and especially I like to talk about helping out with the transition from. A lot of times I do work with athletes as I help them transition from their sport to what they do next, but it's very similar. Speaking to military and veterans who leave the armed forces and try to seek out what it's like to be a civilian, and for many and or most, it's quite challenging. But I want to start with that a little bit. And Eileen, we're going to talk to you in a sec about the Warrior Ranch Foundation, but I'll start with Jeff. You spent so long in the Army, and then was there a point where you were kind of like given the option to retire and you're like, no, I still have unfinished work to do. I'm going to stay in here. And then suddenly you woke up one day and like, oh, dude, man, it's been over 30 years. What am I doing? I'm still in here. Like, tell me a little bit about what happened.
Yeah, sure. Well, Mark, first and foremost, thanks again. And Eileen, it's great to see you again. Last time I was wearing a Stetson and is out there at the ranch with she and a good friend of ours, Steve Castleton. Yeah, I think it was, I think everybody knows at a point in their career where the opportunity is either to continue to serve. I mean, usually even at the general officer level, typically it's 3 to 5 years at the grade that you're in, right? So as a 2-star, which is what I retired as, I was already at 4+ years and knew that even opportunities to go elsewhere were probably maybe 2 years or more down the road. And so for me, it was kind of like, you know what, I'll have to ask to retire, because typically the Army and the larger institutions such as the services will say, hey, there's more that we want you to do. And they could certainly have said, yes, we have another plan for you. And in this case, I had volunteered to retire, and they willingly accepted, and it all worked out. So But still going through the transition, as you know. I mean, it's often hard to share lessons learned when you're still learning them yourself. So, but I look forward to sharing whatever I can.
Well, you know what's interesting is that I always like to say I think we constantly every day we're learning lessons. So I don't think that necessarily goes away. We'll be learning those until the day we hit Earth, right? On the other side of it, anyways. But when you said they willingly accepted your retirement, how willingly were they? Like, Jeff, it's about time. What the heck, or what took you so long? Or was it like, no, you're time out. You got to stay.
I mean, especially at some of the higher ranks, what they'll do is before you can actually be official let go, they'll do what's known as a derogatory review to make sure there's nothing out there pending against you or investigations and things. And then you get a notice in the mail saying the Secretary of the Army approves your retirement at this date, at this rank. And again, thank you for your service. And then it's kind of like somebody flips a switch and then nobody talks to you. And then, the youngest person in the Pentagon calls you up and starts feeding you what's next, and you're like, man, how quickly things have changed.
So, and tell me about that feeling when you were like day one of retirement and you were at some point sitting on a couch or a sofa or something and been like, wait, don't I have to go? Oh, no, I don't have. Wait, what? What am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
What was that like?
I mean, and I think it's the approach that I would share with others, right? And whether it's 30 plus years in the military or, and with the crowd that we have that you've brought together, that Eileen and I can share our stories with, it's no matter if you've invested your life doing one thing, right? Whether it's a sport or work or serving in the military, you're going to have it's an inevitable transition. And so how do you take that time to kind of pause? And for us, and everybody's different. You have to take into, well, do I want to go where the family is, or do I want to go where the job is, or what's motivating you? And for us, we were kind of at a point in our lives where our children, all three of them are grown up and they're off doing their own things. And it's my wife, Debbie, and I, and our two Jack Russell Terriers. And we literally said, let's put all our stuff in storage and go to where we might want to live and put roots in. And so we picked St. Augustine, Florida, rented an Airbnb long-term, and took, no kidding, the last few months to really kind of rest, relax, recover from shoulder surgery. You mentioned, I love surfing. And, I mean, Bethany Hamilton said, you don't need two arms because she lost one in a shark attack. But I'm like, I'm a well-meaning amateur. I need two. So I need time to recover. And for me, the last few months has been kind of, okay, hey, now that I've kind of rested, relaxed, recovered, now I got to kind of redefine purpose, right? So what do I want to do? Because I'm 55. I think I'm, I know we've got Robert Hamilton Owens with us tonight, and that guy is awesome. I think he's just 72 or 72 years young, I think, and just rode across the Atlantic in 43 days. Extraordinary. I'm 55 and I'm like, man, I'm hobbling around and like, holy cow, I have no excuses, right? And he motivates the hell out of me just talking to him. But everybody needs to go back and kind of pause and reflect and then determine, what do I want to do, right? And then how do I capture those things? Whether it's a vision board with your spouse or partner, a milestone event, a timeline, if you will, of those things that you want to accomplish. And that's kind of what I'm going through still, because I'm still in that period of transition. So long story short, right?
No, it's all right. It's all good. No, that's really impressive. Thank you. And Eileen, tell me a little bit about, you've had plenty of military in your family. Give me a rundown of some of the folks that have served.
Oh, my family, my father was a Marine. And like I said, I always say was because he's in heaven now. And as a Marine will always say, once a Marine, always a Marine. My uncle was a commander in the Navy. My brother was in the Navy. My brother-in-law in the Navy. And then the next generation, all the Marines came back. Then we have my 3 Marine nephews, another nephew in the Army. I had another uncle in the Army. So, and then I have brothers that were firefighters, cousins that were cops, EMTs. My mother was a nurse. So we're just surrounded by service. That's how I grew up, was giving back and serving. I personally did not serve. I did other things. I played sports my whole life, and then I went into television production, and I loved horses from afar. And then as I, at some point in my life, and I got into my 30s, I started to get into the horses again, and fell in love with them and rescued them. And then I ended up starting the ranch. It was one thing after another. One thing led into another, and now I have Warrior Ranch Foundation, which is crazy.
Well, yeah. Well, look, it's amazing, and we'll talk about that in a few seconds. I want to pivot back now to Jeff and say, Jeff, tell me about some of the things that that some of the things that affected some of our service members, and what constitutes some of the trauma that they went through, because it obviously ties into a lot of what Eileen's doing now.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's awesome to have a veteran of one of my own organizations during some tumultuous times. Justin Gardner joined us. I don't know if he's still on, but he was part of the 173rd Airborne Brigade and a Special Troops Battalion in Afghanistan for a long 15-month deployment. And so I think, and we were just talking earlier about his recent visits with somebody that was killed in action, family members, and sharing pictures and stories about their loved one that they hadn't heard. I described that, we have opportunities to meet the best in humanity and the absolute worst in the services, especially those that find themselves in combat. And those scars stay with you. Those are things that may not heal. They may not be a broken bone or shattered pelvises or anything that somebody may have explosively gone through. But those memories will last forever. And oftentimes that sense of community that they're used to when they make that transition into a civilian community, things don't always translate. We were even talking about even jobs that he's had don't translate as well. And you've got great folks on here like Frederick tonight who said, hey, give me a call. I've helped people translate terms. So maybe it's not the way you describe it. Maybe it's different words that you can use. But those memories, those events that are fairly traumatic, will be long lasting, and sadly, and can impart a sense of loneliness where they're not willing to share, or if they do, maybe people aren't picking up on it. That lead them to other alternatives, to include suicide. That we are all, I think, striving to prevent. Right, one is too many, and yet if the stat is still the same, that 22 a day are still occurring. But things like what Eileen has founded to offer what I would refer to as a value of life alternative, right? To get gen that purpose up in terms of what you can actually contribute. But I'll defer to her because she's been doing this for years, and it's an extraordinary program. So to her and to you, thanks again for all that you continue to do for veteran advocacy.
Yeah, no, well, thank you. So appreciate that. So Eileen, tell me what got this started, because it's not, again, like I was mentioning to Jeff a second ago, you don't wake up one morning and necessarily say like, I think I'm going to have a ranch. And, so tell me what on earth, what was it that made you think, wait a second, if I combine horses and veterans, blah, 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 what got you to that point?
Yeah. Well, like I said earlier, like, again, growing up with my father as a Marine and my mother as a nurse, I mean, we were always taught to give back. I mean, and every time we saw a veteran or a police officer, we said, thank you, a firefighter, we always were taught respect. And I love horses. I love dogs. I love animals. And there was something, it was a combination of, it's very simple. I simply love my country. It's really, I love my country and I love horses. And we got our first rescue horse in 2003, somewhere around there. And we realized right away, and this was a horse that had a lot of issues, so we had to go through a lot with this horse. And he didn't trust us. We didn't trust him. We had to learn to trust each other. And we went through this whole thing. And part of that, I actually seriously got hurt. But we got through it together. And then we realized, my husband and I realized how healing horses are. And as that was happening, I was helping my father behind the scenes with the Marine Corps Scholarship Foundation. So I started going to these meetings and every month being with veterans and active Marines and understanding what they're going through. And then it just sort of clicked. And I just kept talking about it I talked about it for years before I actually did anything. And in part of my research, when I was talking to I was talking to a Navy SEAL actually, and he had told me he had gone to an equine program. I had told him I wanted to do an equine program. And he told me about one that he did. And I said, oh, that's really great. And what'd you like about it? Blah, blah, blah. And I said, I'm going to do one where we're rescuing horses and we're going to do these type of activities. And his eyes lit up and he goes, you mean I'm going to be helping save the life of that horse? And I said, yes, because we're going to rescue the horse. We're going to retrain it and adopt it out and give it a second chance. He just went, I want your program. The way he lit up. And that's when I was like, oh, I'm onto something here, because that made them feel, I mean, think about it. The men and women who serve, their natural instinct is to serve, protect, to help, to rescue. And now they're helping another being get a second chance in life. And it all, like I said, it wasn't just something overnight. It was something that developed over years. Like I kept talking about it and coming up with different ideas. And then finally one day, I never thought I could do it, because to me, it was like a lottery dream. I'm like, I don't have that kind of property. I don't have that kind of money to do it. And then all of a sudden one day I realized my sister kept telling me, do what you can with what you have. Just start somewhere.
Right. Perfect.
The Marine Corps Scholarship Foundation, this is where that circles back in. They started with one Marine and one son who he couldn't afford to send his son to college. And they started out with a dinner dance in 1962 and raised $1,500. Today, they raise millions of dollars every year and give about 3,000 scholarships 60 something years later. And it dawned on me, well, they started with one. So why don't I start with one soldier and one horse? And that's what happened. And then I took my skill sets in my profession and documented it. I interviewed the veteran before he even got near the horse. And then the trainer came in and we did this whole film, and I did a documentary on it. And then I also made a sizzle reel and went out to every legislator, senator, county executive on Long Island. I finally got the county executive and I was like, come on, don't you want your name on this? And he was like, and then he's an Army veteran. And he actually said, yeah, you know what? I do. And he connected me with the Parks Commissioner, and we now have 6 acres in Calverton, Long Island. It started in my backyard where the general was. He started in my backyard.
So two things. One, I'm going to show in a minute a video that I think was fantastic. But before I do that, one thing I wanted to mention, a lot of times when you serve in the military, you feel an incredible sense of purpose, and your purpose is to conceptually, you're supporting our country and you're defending our country. And when you leave that service and now you're effectively serving yourself, every veteran I've met is very uncomfortable because they're used to serving others. And now suddenly they have to, well, okay, wait a minute, I've got to get a job where I've got to work for this person, but I'm trying to earn money to support myself. And many times they're very uncomfortable with that. And I think when you give them something, which just what you're doing, Eileen, you're giving a veteran a purpose again. You're giving them, they're helping this horse survive and help the horse find a new home. Suddenly so this is why, so many military become first responders, right? Because they're used to that concept of serving. So I think that's fantastic. Are you okay if I jump in and show this video real quick?
Sure.
Great. Why don't you, before I start it, why don't you tell people, it's just a couple minutes, but give them a sense of what.
It's in a nutshell, in 3 minutes is going to tell you what the ranch is all about. You're going to have veterans, you'll hear from the veterans themselves, and you'll hear their stories and what it did for them. It's really just going to tell you what the ranch is all about.
Perfect. Here we go.
Hi, I'm Paul Martinez, Staff Sergeant, retired from the U.S. Army.
I was in the U.S. Navy.
I served in the Coast Guard.
I was in the United States Army. I was an infantryman.
I served in the United States Marine Corps.
I spent 33 years in the U.S. Army.
Everyone who joins the military knows that it's a matter of life and death, because the first thing they do when you arrive in boot camp is they make you fill out your next of kin card.
Ryan, how you doing over there?
You go overseas and you think, we're gonna get killed and chopped up, and then some of us are gonna come home and some of us are not. And that's okay, because that's what you expect, because that's how war works.
I don't think that the general public knows what members of the military and what veterans go through.
When she would come home, she had bags under her eyes. She wasn't sleeping. She wasn't eating. She got, I could just see a total change in her.
And I was having a panic attack. I was sick of my panic attacks.
There was a lot of anger, a lot of sadness, stuff like that.
It doesn't matter how far from over there I ever go. That place over there is going to continue to kill me and my buddies.
There really shouldn't be a loss of a single life for a veteran who has post-traumatic stress. Not a single veteran across this morning. We are 22 veterans a day. The answer should be 0.
And it was just by the grace of God that I found Warrior Ranch.
Honestly, getting out of the Army, it was hard finding a sense of purpose. But coming here and working with horses and working with the veteran and first responder community has really helped tremendously.
It was finally nice to find a place where I was welcome.
We are community for each other. I never thought that I would ever have horses in my life, and now I wonder how I could have not had horses in my life.
Definitely doing the obstacles with them is something challenging, because you have to have a good level of energy to get them over the obstacle or through it.
First time ever having any type of animal therapy, and working with these horses is probably the best way I've ever found to put my emotions towards something and put my effort and mindset to something.
Cody might be the best horse I've ever been around. When I tell people that I go to Warrior Ranch, I tell them that Cody's giving me lessons.
What's up, big guy?
I finally really love myself. And I think I didn't love myself for so long. I felt guilty, like I had done something wrong, and I really love who I am today. And I could thank Warrior Ranch and those horses for that.
What a profound change this has had and the impact it's had on their lives. It makes you really want to support this organization and support this effort so that more veterans can experience this.
There is no doubt that Warrior Ranch is leading the way, providing a path for our veterans to certainly be helped greatly.
It's the therapy that working with these horses is unlike any type of therapy I've ever experienced in my life.
Man, that was awesome. That is such a great, it's amazing.
Thank you.
It really is. Congratulations. Hey, Jeff, you're still muted, by the way. There you go. Way to go. So look, so a few things. First of all, Jeff, I know that you visited the ranch. Tell me a little bit about your experience there.
Well, it was interesting because I think, as Eileen shared, it was still in its infancy, if you will, in terms of being right in her backyard. And a good friend of ours actually introduced us, Steve Castleton. He's a civilian aide to the Secretary of the Army, so an ambassador for the Army. And Steve, I believe, Eileen, is he a co-founder of the?
No, he was on the board for a while, and
board member.
Yeah, he was a board member, and then because he's a civilian aide, he had to step down.
That's right. So
he's emeritus.
He introduced us, and so it was just I knew that I wanted to get out there. I was running out of time as I was getting ready to transition from New York down to Washington, D.C. And so that's how Eileen and I met. I rode out there, drove out, had based on my first cavalry division time, I had a Stetson hat, came out and visited with everybody, and I got to meet the individuals. We have our challenge coins. So I was able to pass out some challenge coins to all the veterans who had served and some of her teammates. And then really just got to go through the daily regimen of how they care for the horses. And you could see that the immediate connection for those, a lot of folks, and I'm sure Eileen would say, folks that are going through these trials, they tuck inward, right? And so they're probably very quiet and they're not going to openly communicate. And yet you'll see them connect with a horse. And even if it's as simple as just brushing the horse, or leading them around a circle, as their skills develop with the horse. And I think, they graduate, right, through
Mhm.
different levels of
Yeah.
progression through the equine system that she's built. And it's just extraordinary, and it's heartwarming, and you want to advocate for an organization. So thanks for showing that video, and continuing your own advocacy, Mark, not just for Eileen, but for so many other organizations that are doing similar things.
Oh, thank you, Jeff. So Eileen, tell me a little bit about, because look, I told you a little story about when I was a kid. I was at a camp, and there were horses there, and this was down in Venezuela when I used to live down there. And I went galloping off, and I went galloping. We were flying through a field, and I was kind of thinking, I think I'll do better off not on the horse than on it. And I kind of jumped off. I was okay. I was really obviously wasn't that bright, and probably, affected how I'm thinking today. But
You want to be a stuntman.
yeah, exactly. I always thought that was cool. But anyways, but then it took me a long time to want to get back up on, and you were telling me about how horses can sense everything we feel and vice versa. Tell me a little bit about that, and how with the warriors and the veterans that are working in this program, how that light switch turns on.
Sure. So by nature, horses are prey animals and humans are predators. That's just nature. So being a prey animal, their senses are very heightened. All right. They can feel a fly land on them. You'll see them twitch out in the field. Like if you see them in the field, their hair will move when a fly lands on them. That's all the energy you need to move a horse. Right. They're also, because they're prey animals, their eyes, their monocular visions, they're on sides of their eyes, so they can see almost 360 degrees around them. They can't see directly in front of them or directly behind them. So they got incredible eyesight. Their hearing is incredible. Their sense of touch. So their senses are very heightened, and they're very in tune, and they sense our energy. Okay, so if Mark, you came and say, "Hey, Eileen, how you doing today?" I said, "Mark, I'm doing fantastic, great day," and I could be smiling, but I could also be lying through my teeth. I could say, like the academy here, because I'm just lying and putting on a face, and we all do it at some point or another. That horse, no matter how good of an actor you are, that horse is going to know, because they have to, because their life depends on it, because they're prey animals.
Right.
So if you have, let's say I'm angry or something, and I'm like slamming the car door, and I'm like, oh gosh, and then I'm right near the barn, and I go, okay, let me just shake it off. That horse is already on the other side of the pasture, because he's like, I ain't going anywhere near her, right? So you really have to be aware of yourself, okay? And that's what happens at Warrior Ranch. We teach the basic communication with the horse, and the horse will mirror your energy. So if you're mad or angry, or you're holding some anger in you, and you ask the horse to back up, that horse is going to back right back up. But when we ask you to gently bring him back in, he's not going to come back in, and he's going to stand there, and you're going to have a tug of war with him, and you're not going to win that tug of war. He's 1,000 pounds. You're not going to win. So you have to remember to breathe. You have to relax. You have to release a lot. And that's where a lot of people see it. Like they'll be having a tug of war with the horse, and they're like, and then they'll start going like, oh my God, I'm a terrible person, this and that. And then once they let that go, the horse comes in, because you're releasing it. Right. So we do all these exercises, there's herd dynamics. And in the horse world, horses communicate through body language, and they'll pin their ears, they'll poke at each other, they'll bite each other, they'll kick each other. That's how they communicate. It's all through body language. So they also have, whether it's 2 horses or 100, there's only one leader, one number 1, one number 2, one number 3, all the way down. When we enter their herd, we have to be that leader, because otherwise, because again, they know that's how they communicate, is by poking, biting, kicking, and striking. And if they do that to us, we're going to get hurt. So we teach the basic skill sets on how to safely communicate with a horse. So, and we have the participants work with our trained horses, but then they'll watch us work with a rescue horse that's wide-eyed and not trusting and this and that. And at the end of the session, they'll see how anxious that horse is. But then at the end of the session, the horse will be nice and relaxed and following us around. And it's very empowering and powerful when you see that. When you see a non-trusting animal come and then suddenly trust you. And now think about it. It's like we'll take an off the track racehorse, or we'll take a horse out of an auction, which is heading into a wrong place. So they have trust issues. when our veterans come home from overseas, and then all of a sudden, like, they're rock stars and they're doing something every day. Now all of a sudden, boom, thank you very much, but please don't do that. They don't know what to do. They were treated like a rock star there. Now all of a sudden they're like, they can relate to that horse that's going through the same thing. Make sense? And then we have them work with the horses, and they start to become self-aware. They build up their self-confidence. They build up their self-esteem. And you had said something earlier, because a lot of times when we have new participants come, they come walking in like this, like, who are you? What are you going to do for me? You know, and that's okay. We don't take that personally. We just smile. We go through the whole thing. We teach them how to communicate with the horse. By the end of the day, their arms are open. They're smiling. They're laughing. They enjoy, and they're starting to trust again. And there's a lot of camaraderie that's built at the ranch. You know, we have folks from 20 years old all the way into their 70s. So it's a whole generation. There's a few generations in there, and there's a lot of camaraderie that happens, and it's pretty cool to watch. And there are some folks that come for a little while and get the introductory. Then we've got at least 20 to 30 that come all the time and want to advance their horsemanship. You know, we first teach you some stuff so you get to learn about yourself. It's called equine assisted learning therapy. But then those who want to continue the horsemanship, we teach them more advanced stuff and things like that. And we also have, you saw in the video, the miniature horses. We have the little horses too, because some folks might be afraid of a big horse. So we have the different sizes, and it's funny because everyone thinks the smaller horses are easy to work with, and they're not. They're really not. They're a lot tougher than.
Well, it's kind of like little dogs. Little dogs are feisty too, you know.
But that's kind of it. You know, they gain the self-awareness. It's the beginning of self-awareness. Self-confidence comes back. Self-esteem comes back. They start to trust and things like that, and they start opening up again.
That's amazing. You know, let me shift over to Jeff for a second, because I'm curious to hear this. You know, I know that over the years, you've obviously served with so many people. Have you, has the Army ever considered the use of any sort of, I mean, I know they're canine units, and then there's also some horses in the cavalry and so forth. But, you know, one of the things that Eileen mentioned was just how important it is to have, you're talking about the whole concept of having the ability to sort of bond with an animal. Sometimes is easier than bonding with a human. But did you have any experience with that at all, Jeff?
No, I mean, well, I guess I did at Fort Hood, Texas, where we had a detachment of horses, and I found out as part of my duty description that I was responsible for the horse detachment. so very quickly I had to learn. In fact, I remember my horse's name was New York City, actually, and so I had one set aside, and we would take people out on cattle or on rides just to introduce them, especially when we brought international partners. But in terms of an actual program, you know, you mentioned the canines and the various detachments that we have at some of the units based on parades and things like that. Probably not as much. I mean, you know, certainly if service members are going through and want to sign up for the service dogs or canines and things. I mean, those programs are open not only to those that are on active reserve or National Guard. You don't have to retire or discontinue your service to sign up for that. That's available today. But there's really not, I don't believe, an overarching program that allows them to do that on their own. Again, a lot of that sense of loss is when they actually leave, because they lack then that team or that small group that they're used to growing up with or have moved around with. But no, I mean, that's a great idea to maybe give others exposure to these programs, certainly based on even what Eileen's doing. So
well, it's interesting because, you know, we've seen that in many hospitals or elderly care facilities and so forth, they have the sort of the therapy dogs that come in, and, you know, just thinking how uplifting it would be to have a few sort of dogs running around the base or whatever it might be. You know, I don't know. Anyway, just a random thought. So again, switching back to Eileen for a sec, tell me a little bit about, the process that a veteran goes through when they come in and they start bonding with the horse. Is there a point where, it happens and then like, does the veteran ever sort of stop and move on to another veteran? How does it, tell me a little bit about if there's a separation, or how's that work?
Everybody's a little different, to be honest with you. Everybody's different because it depends on what they're going through. But they all come to a point where they're like, oh my gosh, well, first walking up to the animal, like if they've never been around horses, which 90% of them have never been around horses.
Right.
And when they first walk up to them, they're a little nervous, and they'll be petting them and they'll be like this far away. I'm like, no, you can get a little closer, and they start, so we start out with the grooming. You start grooming the horse first, because then you build that connection. We tell them to keep one hand on the horse and the other hand brushing the horse. And the horse can feel your heartbeat from 5 feet away. So you start syncing up with that horse, and the horse will start feeling your energy as you're grooming them. And if you're anxious, they will, there's a difference between having anxiety and being angry. You know what I mean? It's anxiety, the horse can comfort you, and Cody is one of the horses where someone is really having trouble. He will beeline right to that person. It's very interesting. When we have a group of people, he'll just go right over. And then by the end of the day, we're like, wow, that person was the one who really needed it the most. We do get some pre-information about the people that come first too, but they groom. And then once, at first they get nervous, and if they're not getting the exercise right, they could be a little frustration of this and that. We just say, hey, just relax. It's okay. There's no judgment, no pressure. And everyone takes their time. But once they get it, they're like, oh, like you'll see the eyes light up and like, oh my God, and it's really kind of neat. And they all want their picture with the horse by the end, and it's, like I said, it's very interesting because when they first come, there's a little uncertainty, and also they're working with tools that are very awkward too. We have a long stick with a rope, and people I still get it tangled up after 20 years. Sometimes I'll get it tangled up, but so it's like, and we joke on ourselves, we make fun of ourselves too to make everybody feel comfortable, because it happens. You get tangled in the ropes, but yeah, it's not, it's different for everyone, I would have to say, because everyone's going through something different. But when we let them go in the round pen and move the horse around without anything on the horse, and then that horse starts what we call joining up. Like, you send the horse around in a circle, you ask him to change a couple different directions, and then you call the horse in and you start walking around. The horse is following you like a puppy dog. That's when it gets everybody. They all love that. It's wow, I can't believe this, because you're now leading that horse. You're the leader.
Yeah.
And that's what, so it's pretty cool. You brought something up earlier that I have to mention when you're saying, because there are some veterans, some people don't have any interest in the horses. They just want to be there. They want to be around their comrades. And that ranch, when we got it, needed so much work. And when I tell you, those veterans were there every weekend helping to build it, and chainsaws, taking trees down and shrubs out and painting. They all came, whether they're working with the horses or working on another project, like putting up fence posts for me. It's a remarkable group of people. They just want a purpose, a path and a purpose.
Right.
And they come to the ranch, and they've built a lot of it. I have to give them a lot of credit, because a lot of the renovations were done from the veterans.
That's amazing. That's amazing. All right, I want to shift again to something that I want to ask Jeff a little bit about, because I'm curious to hear your answer to this. But I see that there obviously a big percentage of veterans, they leave military life, they transfer into civilian life, and they become very successful because they're able to transfer a lot of the skill set that they developed as in the military. Whether it's again, incredible work ethic and understanding of how to be managed and how to be commanded effectively, how to push past boundaries, how to pivot on a dime. There's so many qualities that someone in the military has that actually syncs up with a lot of athletes and makes them very successful moving forward. But obviously a lot of them struggle. What do you think is one of the primary reasons why some folks really face a lot of challenges when they transfer out?
Well, I think largely because And I think you mentioned we've talked about this in the past about, again, you talked 1% that typically serve, right? And the 99% of the others that have some various level of understanding of what service is like or what service members have contributed, but there's a lot of education still required. And so from work ethic to include values, right? Because if you bring somebody in off the street, depending on where that street was, their values were all different. But over a period of time, they kind of start to imbue those values. And you don't check that at the door when you leave. You still carry some of that with you, right? Loyalty, respect, duty, our sense of duty, integrity. And sometimes when they make that transition, depending on the organizations that they join or become or want to join, they can realize real quickly that not everybody may have that same value, right? And so you do have choices, but if you're driving to get food on the table or take care of your family or things, you're going to make decisions that may not be in your best interest sometimes, but you have to for the sake of need. And that's why I often will encourage folks, again, when you're looking at that transition, take some time to write down what it is that it's important to you. Don't be informed by necessarily everybody that's around you, because the Joneses, right? Yeah, if you're always constantly looking at everybody else, you're not looking at yourself and you're not taking that into consideration. And so if you quiet your mind a little bit, separate and distance what everybody else's expectations might be for yourself, and write down what you expect of yourself and set those milestones and events. And I always tell people, I was like, I don't know, there's something, whether it's journaling or just writing a damn timeline down, that when you write it down, you manifest it, and you don't look at it every day. Some people might want to put it up on, what was it? Ted Lasso put up Believe or whatever on his door or whatever. I'm talking about, no kidding, milestones and objectives that you write down for yourself, and then put it away. And maybe a year from now, go back and take a look and see, holy cow, if you manifest it, it'll come back at you 10 times what you didn't think would happen, because you're subconsciously driving towards those things that you set for yourself. And a lot of people often will not take that time, and they'll jump right in from the frying pan into the pot, and realize, man, things are just not changing for me. Well, it's because you maybe didn't take the time that you needed to actually capture what's most important. And after you've thought about yourself for a while, you can't love others if you can't love yourself, then what do you do about those that you do love, and maybe capture some of their milestone events as well, and balance your life, but be in there for some of those events that you might otherwise miss because they weren't important to you at the time. So those are some things that I coach people to do. And it seems to be working for some, not necessarily everyone.
Well, what's interesting is I think I feel that you're taking your own advice, which is great, because you've been out for a couple of months now, a few months, and clearly you're taking that step back and really sort of absorbing what's around you as sort of like a sponge, and you're thinking, well, these are all the things I accomplished and I did in my career in the Army, but what are some of the things that I really enjoyed doing? And in your case, your expertise is absolutely within engineering and with construction, and now you're pivoting towards, well, how can I continue to do good with that expertise? Tell me a little bit about what you're doing now, or what you'd like to do with your company, and give me a couple examples of what you've been running into so far.
Yeah, sure. So I think that's a lesson learned for everyone. I'm learning from you. I'm learning from so many other people around me, as I've now kind of defined what I want to do, which is, still leverage the expertise of engineering, construction management that I've experienced worldwide. There's a lot of folks out there, a lot of countries that do nefarious things, not always for their good, right? And so I'd like to offer an alternative to others to do something for underserved communities. And that could be in the United States, that could be in Africa, that could be in South America, it could be anywhere, where I've still maintained contacts with folks that I've met over 3 decades now. And so that's what I'm aiming to do, is to leverage, my ability to network, I guess, through even organizations such as your own, to find people that have a requirement, others that have resources, angel investors or other organizations that want to do those type things, and then find others that have maybe innovative capabilities that haven't been used before and bring them all together into a room and say, you've got the money, you've got the capability, and you have the need. Let's drive towards this and put this back in the hands of the 99% that often may not see the benefit because, you know, whether it's somebody at a higher level that is getting paid off by somebody else, 99% of the community or the population will never see it. And similarly, you know, sharing that expertise and maybe providing them an opportunity to maybe grow a company and do this for themselves. That's even more powerful. So for me, it's just really kind of continuing to give back and serve in a different way, but really putting it in the hands. I love meeting people. That's not a problem. It doesn't matter where you're from. And I've told people, I don't care gender, race, religion, whatever, ethnicity, it does not matter. Orientation does not matter. So, but what's the real need? And then bringing those other resources to bear. And that's what I'm using through Cloudbreak Global Ventures. And then also my other passion, as you mentioned, was surfing, right? And so, and there are foundations very similar to Eileen's where you can introduce veterans to water, to a water sport such as surfing, where they can, again, be introduced into a community, have fun while you're doing it, and also meet with similar people, similar backgrounds, so you can still maybe open yourself up a little bit and share what you're going through, and live, again, another value of life alternative. So I'll probably put that under the umbrella of the company at some point in time too, or set up a chapter of an organization that's already up and running, vice trying to start up. And I think that was your advice. So I've taken it.
Phew. That's fantastic. Really amazing. Eileen, I know you want to do more. I know that's you, right? Tell me a little bit about your plans on how you'd like to make this even bigger, how you'd like to grow the ranch and get more horses, etc. Tell me about
well, we definitely want to grow. Definitely have a vision for sure. And I do want to say at this moment, I couldn't have done it without, there's a lot of people who helped along the way. So this wasn't just me. There's a ton of people along the way. And I just want to mention we have some great horse trainers that help. Gina Lamb of Iron Horse Fields, Rob West, Kathy Wilbert, Juliet Hackett. So there's definitely some people there who are helping, who help this program grow, and they all have a lot of input. And what we want to do right now, we're still a young organization, and we're only open part-time. We have people there every day because the horses have to be taken care of, but we want to grow to a point where we're open 7 days a week because the participation is growing, the interest is there. I mean, every time our veterans and first responders are there, they're like, all right, what's next? When's the next time we can be here? What are we doing? So we started changing. It used to be all groundwork because, again, we crawl before you walk before you run. Right. So we started with all groundwork, and now we introduced the riding program. Now we have them actually on the horse's back, but you have to get to a certain point. You have to pass our ground level work before you do that. Then we have this other gentleman who comes in, Joe Ortega, and he shows them how to rope. Like, rope. We have a little fake cow, and he does that. And one of these days, he'll bring in real cows when they get to the point. We have Robbie Siegelman, who does a driving program. He drives a cart, standardbred trotter that we rescued. And that horse's name is Sully. That's the other thing I want to say. We have 4 rescue horses, actually 3 now, because one just got adopted, that was a milestone for this year. For us, it was a milestone, our first adoption. We're excited about that. But we have Sully, who's a standardbred, and he's blind in one eye. He actually only has one eye. So again, our veterans relate to that horse in particular, and then we have Ranger and another horse, Schmeg. But anyway, so we do want to grow. We want to grow nationally. We've had participants come from, so as most folks know, we are on Long Island, New York, or in Long Island, New York, however. We've had participants come from Connecticut, New Jersey, Maine, New Hampshire, Virginia. So we've had folks come from all over, and we do eventually want to go national. We do want to open up in other places. So that is our ultimate goal. Obviously, that all takes funding. But we're getting there. That's the future. But the immediate future is to open up 7 days a week here on Long Island, and then master that, and then open
But
up.
okay, so you need to raise money. How do people get that money to you? All right,
Uh,
well, how are you doing it?
Well, we do fundraisers. We have our big fundraiser in October. It's the first Sunday in October, and it's held at the ranch. And we do horse demonstrations. We have an honoree. We do things like that. And then also just basically go to our website. You can donate on our website, which is warriorranchfoundation.org. And yeah, we have people who go out and talk to companies to try and get them interested, cultivate some relationships. And that's what we do. We also have a naming campaign, so we can name the building after you, the arena after you. We'll name the fence post. We'll name everything, So doing all sorts of things like that.
Fence post. I like that. I'll take a fence post. I'll take the mud underneath the. No.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, I just put your website in the chat box there. So if anybody would like to go in there, please, I strongly urge anybody to give whatever you can. I think it's such a fantastic program.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And also, if you happen to be on Long Island or in that area, maybe there's a way you can help out and volunteer, and help
Please
grow
visit
the
the ranch if you're on the island, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Well,
We'll get you out there, Mark. We'll get you out there.
Oh yeah. But I got to borrow Jeff's. I want to borrow Jeff's
I'll say my
Stetson.
Stetson.
I got to borrow the hat. Yeah. Anyways, you have some boots too, Jeff?
Somewhere.
Some running boots. Yeah. I'll come out there with ski boots. And you're like, wait, what? Anyways, but listen. So both of you have been fantastic. I'm going to ask a little sort of fun question to wrap things up here, and then we'll talk one other subject. But Jeff, I'm going to put you on the spot first. If you had a chance to have dinner with 3 people, alive or dead, who would you pick?
Certainly would pick my mom, who's not been around for a while now, so she would be at the table. I don't know. That's hard. I mean, that came out of nowhere. So yeah, I was unprepared for that one.
I just hope I'm getting the same question because I'm thinking.
Yeah, goodness, it's hard, isn't it?
No, yours is going to be no. Of course. Well, look, Jeff,
Yeah.
seriously, this is. I mean, first of all, you shouldn't pick. I mean, no offense. I'm sure your mom's wonderful, but that's too easy. And you can't pick like you're also your old dog and this. So, I mean, look, military leaders, athletes, musicians, historical figures. Like me. How cool would it be to sit down and have like a glass of brandy with like Napoleon or something, or Abraham Lincoln or George Washington or whatever, or Neil Armstrong, or in my case Paul McCartney, or Cleopatra. Like that would be pretty incredible. Things like that. So come on, there you go.
Well, you came up with a lot of them, but I mean, it's just, man, I don't know. I mean,
you're just not impressed with anybody.
I
That's
am.
what it is.
Well, no, it's not that I'm unimpressed, but I guess it's just wow. I don't know. That just probably shows the shallowness of my hobbies, right?
All right. Well, wait a minute. Kelly Slater.
Oh no. Yeah, Kelly's. I mean, he's pretty cool, I guess. But I would probably pick somebody else. I don't know. I'd go to somebody that lives there, maybe John Florence, or his family. In terms of, I think I shared with you, like maybe Jimmy Buffett. I mean, he's about to probably, I don't know how much longer he's got to go, but he's still giving it his all. And quite honestly, it'd be interesting. I'd love to sit down and talk to Robert Hamilton Owens after his that feat. That's pretty amazing. I'd love to hear more about what else he's got planned. I was asking him briefly, and he didn't get to share all that before he had to drop. So
I will tell you, his book Beyond Average is one of the best books ever. I read a lot, and his book, I happen to know him. So when you read a book with somebody you're reading the words and you're hearing his voice, which is strange a little bit, but an incredible outline of his year that he did when he was 66 years old, and he did so many different incredible feats, including the World Marathon Challenge, which is 7 marathons in 7 days on 7 continents, which is crazy. He completed the Kokoro, the 50-hour endurance challenge run by the SEALs in San Diego, and he completed the eldest person to complete that. He ran across the island of Crete, I think it was, the 300 miles, and I want to say he was in his sandals, but he wasn't. But but things like that. He's just done all these incredible things where he's not necessarily, and I hope he's not here or listening, but he, he didn't he's not like a big buff dude and everything else. It's just, it's the tenacity, and it's how to be above average. So you better thank me for plugging his book. Anyway, but great answer. Eileen, all right, you're up. Who are you three?
Well, because I had a few minutes to think about it. So, well, Ray Hunt is, again, mine is all going to be horse things. Ray Hunt is an incredible horseman. He's gone from this world, but he's somebody I would love to sit and chat with. He's one of the ones who were the old cowboys who taught city folks about horses. So that's why we're all safe now, because there's some of these guys, Ray Hunt, Pepper, they all introduced it to, they knew the secrets and then taught it. Not everybody does that. So that was pretty cool. I'd love to sit with him. I'd love to sit with Kevin Costner and have a lunch with him. And then maybe even somebody like John Wayne. I think that would be pretty cool.
There you go, Kevin Costner. That'd be interesting because, you know, I think everyone's a fan of his show now, right?
Yeah.
You know, so
I've always been a fan of his, but especially now.
oh, he makes my heart flutter. No kidding. I'll be striking that from the record, Your Honor. Anyways, well, listen, I really appreciate you both being here. I love what you're, you know, Jeff, Jeff, thank you so much for your service. And, you know, it's such a long and distinguished career, but I'm also really excited to see your next career and what you accomplish going forward. So congratulations in advance for that. And may you have lots of time to surf in between everything else you do. And Eileen, you know, one thing sometimes you don't see when you're in the middle of it is the impact that what you do has on even just one person. Mm-hmm. And based on that video, I could see that you've already touched so many people, but I think that, I hope that's a lot of what drives you, is just the amount of, just the return on investment can't be measured. It's just incredible. And, you know, I'm sure that there have been plenty of folks that have come through your ranch that may not have had the best of path going forward otherwise, and you steered them the right way. So congratulations on that. And anybody that can help in any sort of way, I encourage you to do so with the Warrior Ranch Foundation. So please check out that link. And let's now, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Sure, I appreciate it. I just want to say, Jeff, thank you too for all your support that you've done for us. I really appreciate it.
It's an honor. Keep doing what you're doing. Incredible.
Yeah. Thank you for having us. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.